Welcome to our DIY horror movie poster tutorial and contest. Hey guys, and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace, and you can find me on Phlearn.com, where we make learning fun. And I'm so excited to be announcing the month of October is Halloween DIY horror movie month. We're gonna be releasing multiple tutorials showing you how to create your own horror movie poster, and then you get to make your own horror movie poster and submit it on Phlearn.com, where you could win a year of Phlearn Pro. That's every tutorial we've ever made, including presets, actions, and brushes. It's an incredible value. We're giving away 9 different prizes. All the details and submissions and entries and things like that, all of it you can find on the site. You can click here on your screen right now. This is gonna be an incredible month. We're doing different tutorials, all for Halloween and horror movie posters. All right, we got a really fun episode for you guys today. Let's go ahead and jump in, take you through the photography process, and we're gonna show you how to make the poster in Photoshop. So for this contest, we want it to totally be DIY. So you can use anything you can find out there to create these images. In fact, for our photo shoot, we actually just used a regular light bulb as our main light source. Now, it was creating a little bit of glare in the camera itself, so we just wrapped some black foil around the front of it. You could use a black t-shirt, whatever you have. Basically, that just stops the light from getting into the camera. So we wanted to make sure the subject was isolated from the background. So we set up a black background. In this case, it's a piece of black seamless paper. Now, you can totally just shoot this outside or in a dark environment and basically get the exact same thing. So our light, again, was just a light bulb, and the camera was using a 85mm 1.8, which is a relatively inexpensive lens, and that's it. That's the entire setup. Now, for the actual effect, we use plastic wrap. Basically just wrap my entire body in plastic wrap, which is incredibly fun. Kind of scary, actually. It was really not that comfortable. So here's a warning. Don't wrap yourself in plastic wrap, and if you do, make sure you can breathe and make sure there's someone with safety standing by. So the shoot itself was incredibly easy. It took like 10 minutes. Basically, we just wanted to make sure there was enough light on the subject and not any light on the background. And then the main part of it, we had Jack actually like standing behind me, who's pulling the saran wrap tight around my face. But the results are really cool. And we wanted to create like a horror type movie, but something that would be easy to shoot in the studio and easy to edit and easy to put together. So for this contest, we want you to be super creative and get great images done with really minimal equipment. Just things you can find around the house, different types of effect. Maybe you got a cool location. Maybe you do use a light bulb, just like we did as your main light source. Do it on the cheap and get creative. So now that you know what went into the photo shoot itself, let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop and pull this whole thing together. All right, guys, let's pull this poster together in Photoshop. So the first thing I'm gonna do is bring in my raw file. Now, I've already got it selected here. We didn't take that many pictures, so it wasn't that hard to choose a select. So I'm just gonna simply click and drag my raw file directly into Photoshop, and you're gonna see it's gonna open up our Adobe Camera Raw. Now, all of these details, this is exactly how we actually shot it. So no adjustments have been made just yet. So I'm gonna go in here and just kind of add a little bit of contrast. This is like a horror movie poster, right? So I'm not trying to make it like super beautiful and maintain all my details. In fact, we're gonna kind of enhance and exaggerate some of these things. Let's pull our highlights down a little bit, and I'm gonna bring our vibrance down there as well, and maybe just make it a little bit warmer color temperature wise. And we're gonna be doing a bunch of adjustments to the image itself. So all of these adjustments will be applied to this photo when I bring it in. And keep in mind your settings right down here on the bottom. Let's bring that up. Your settings right here on the bottom, this is how it's gonna import into Photoshop. So you can see my color space is gonna be Pro Photo RGB. It's gonna be 16-bit, and here's my size. So let's go ahead and hit open here. There we go. And the first thing I want to do, I'm going to hit F for full screen. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and cut me out of the background and get rid of these other hands in there. I just want it to look like there's just, one person in this photo. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option, double click on my background, and that's going to turn it into a regular layer. Then we're going to go to Layer, down to New Fill Layer. I'm going to go to Solid Color, and we're going to fill this with black. There we go. So this is going to be a background. It's going to be filled with black. Now, in this case, I know this looks black behind me, but pretty much every time something looks black in Photoshop, it's actually not black. So here's a great way to test that. I'm gonna grab an adjustment layer here. We're gonna go to levels, okay? And I'm gonna take my white point and drag this from the right to the left. And you're gonna see basically if it was truly black, it would still be black even if I drag this from the right to the left. So you can see in this case, actually none of that in the background was black. Okay, so that's why we use these levels adjustment layers to just give us an idea of what actually is 100% black or 100% white. So in this case, here's my layer with me on it. So I'm gonna click on my layer mask icon and we're gonna use our brush tool and simply paint black on my layer mask here in the background. So basically I'm masking away this layer. I'm making this layer invisible in this area. And what that's doing is it's revealing the black fill layer that I put behind this layer. Okay, so you can see if this layer was invisible here, that's basically what we're doing here. We're just revealing the black layer that's directly behind that. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I've done a pretty rough job, cutting this out here, kind of on purpose. Don't really need to get any more refined than that. The next thing I want to do is just darken this area down. So the reason I'm doing this is if I cut an area out like that, it's going to completely just cut out like, the actual object there. But if I just darken it down, it's going to basically give this the appearance of black, but it's going to keep whatever's going on right here. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to create an adjustment layer. We're going to go to levels. Okay, and now I'm going to take my black point and click this and drag it from the left to the right until you see this border around here. It's pretty dark here, right? But we want it to be black. So I'm going to take my black point and just make it actually black so it appears black even when we have this levels adjustment layer on there. It's still appearing black, right? Okay. Now keep in mind this is visible on everything. So I want to click on my clipping mask icon, and that's going to make it only visible where my subject is visible. Okay, so now this levels adjustment layer, you can see it's only going to be visible where my subject is visible. All right, now I'm going to invert this layer mask. Control or Command I to invert the layer mask, and then we're going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to paint white on this layer mask. And basically this is just making this levels adjustment layer visible wherever I paint white. Okay, so you can see even if I paint inside of here, it's not going to completely erase it away. It's just going to make it darker. So that's the deal why why I did a pretty quick job with my layer mask. And now I'm just darkening just the very edge here. And this basically makes it look like it's perfectly masked out, but it just takes like 2 seconds. So it's just a faster, easier way to do it. And if you paint over top of your subject with this layer mask, it's not that big of a deal. All it's going to do is darken it down, but it's not going to cut it out. All right, there we go. And we'll just come right around the top here and make all that black as well. Okay, now I realize all this was done with this levels adjustment layer on, so I'm going to turn that back off, and you can see basically, if you're in this view, like you basically can't even see what I just did, but it's really important because it basically makes this, instead of really dark gray, it makes it completely black. So now we have a perfectly black background to work with, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut out the hands from this image. And to do this, I'm just going to use my layer mask, and I'm just going to use my brush tool here. So we're just going to paint black with our brush tool. There we go. And basically this is just masking the hands out from that layer. There we go. And then I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool in just a minute to fill that in so it doesn't look like hands. All right, let's go ahead and mask out these hands as well. All right. Now I'm going relatively quick with this because it's a tutorial here. I just want to make sure we get a bunch of information across and you guys don't get super bored. But when you're creating your own movie poster, take your time and have fun with this. This is a really, really fun thing that you can do. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to create another layer here. I'm going to clip this to, again, we're going to clip all this to our subject. Okay, every time I'm editing something and it's going to be visible where my subject is, we're going to clip that. So you want to right click and go to create a clipping mask. Okay, and I'm going to use the clone stamp tool here, and I'm just going to clone stamp some of this fabric here. That's not fabric, like plastic wrap stuff. I'm just going to clone stamp it from over here, There we go. We're just going to copy it over here, basically. A little highlight around the edge, and we're almost done. All right, so just hold Alt or Option to copy, or to sample rather. All right, and then simply paint in where you want it to show up. All right, cool. So you can see we just got rid of those hands. It's pretty easy to do. Saran wrap or cling wrap looks like that. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do, I'm just gonna get rid of this little line here real quick. We're gonna grab our spot healing brush tool and simply paint right over this line. And this spot healing brush tool is really good for blemish removal and removing objects like that. Okay, we're looking good. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is basically this reflection here, the color of this reflection, you can see it's on the cool side. And this is actually reflecting the windows here in the studio. This reflection here is on the warm side because that's from the light bulb. So what I'm gonna do is create a new layer. We're gonna clip that and I'm gonna actually choose this color. So let's grab our brush tool, hold Alt or Option and choose this color from the skin, like this nice warm color here. And then we're just gonna simply paint over here with this area that's cool. There we go, looking pretty good. And I'm gonna change the layer blend mode from normal to hue, okay? And that's just gonna make it a little bit warmer. It looks like I chose a hue that was a little bit too green, so let's just choose one that's a little bit more in skin tone. And just paint right over top of that. So you can see it takes a little bit of the cool out of there. Let's just make that visible and invisible. Not a huge change, but you can see it's slightly bluish, and we're just taking away the blue tint to it. Okay, well, that's looking pretty good, guys. So now that we've basically got me cut out of the background, it's time to start pulling in some of our textures. So let's go ahead and group all these layers together. I'm gonna Control or Command G to group those together. Okay, now we're gonna pull in our textures. So let's go back to our Finder. Now, I've already went on the internet and found these textures. These are actually from a really cool website called lostandtaken.com. And we'll link to that in the description right down below. So you guys can download your own textures. So these are a couple like metal scratch textures. And we're just gonna drag them directly into our image. So the key here, and I'm gonna do this one at a time, because I dragged them right in from Finder, they're gonna be smart objects. You can see that little icon there that means it's a smart object. Now, smart objects are really great because you can do all kinds of things with a smart object and it's not going to affect the original image. So let's go ahead and scale this up here. We're gonna make this a little bit larger. I'll show you what I mean with this whole smart object thing in just a minute. Okay. The first thing I want to do is I got to get the background invisible, right? I only want this to show, I just want to see the scratches. So first thing we're going to do is change this from a normal to a multiply layer. My bad, we're going to change it to a screen layer. Screen makes black invisible and it just shows the light stuff. So now I just need to enhance this a little bit more because we can't really see through this. So let's hit Control or Command L for our levels. Okay, and here I'm just gonna take my midpoint and drag this from the left to the right. There we go, and that's basically just going to bring in it's gonna make our darks a little bit darker. There we go, which makes just those scratches show up. And let's hit OK. Very cool, so now we can use this kind of wherever we want, and we can fade this in or out, lower our opacity, and have all kinds of fun with it. All right, let's do the same thing for this layer here. So this layer, we're gonna change the layer blend mode from normal down to screen as well. Control or Command L for our levels. Let's take our black point and bring it up a little bit. There we go. And let's hit OK on that one as well. Now, in this case, we got all that blue. I really don't want to worry about that here. So I'm going to just change the color of it. Let's go to our layer, down to new adjustment layer and over to hue/saturation. Let's hit OK. Now, I'm going to clip this hue saturation adjustment layer to my smart object. So Option Command G will clip that to the smart object, or you know what? You can do this, or you can just hit Control or Command U. We'll do both of the versions so I can show you both. But basically, when you have a smart object, you can add smart filters, which is really cool. So for instance, I can turn this levels off and on at any time. So let's use the smart filters because I actually like that. So to apply a smart filter, and we're going to do a hue saturation, hit Control or Command U, and that's going to bring up hue saturation. I'm going to click on this colorize. There we go, and let's hit OK. And then you can simply turn this off or on at any point in time. Or if it's not saturated enough or too saturated, in this case it's a little bit too saturated, so let's go ahead and bring that saturation down a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good. Now the other cool thing about using smart objects is the smart filters. Check this out. If I want the exact same hue saturation that I put onto this layer, I can just copy it onto this one. So I'm gonna hold Alt or Option and click on my hue saturation and just drag it down there. And look, it's gonna colorize this layer exactly the same. So you can turn these off or on at any time. See, it's colorizing that, it's giving that the warm color. And there we've got our levels. Okay, now in this case, I'm gonna continue to adjust these things as we continue to edit our image, but we're ready to start bringing in our new background. So in this case, this is a stock image that I found from Pexels. It's just like a picture of like a forest, basically. So we're gonna bring this in here. There we go. That looks pretty good. And we're gonna basically do the same thing. I'm gonna basically put the same coloring on this layer that we did with the scratches. So let's hold Alt or Option. I'm gonna click this hue saturation and do the same thing. So we got the same color going with those as well. All right, now let's click on here. We're gonna hit Controller Command L for our levels. All right, we're gonna bring our black point or our midpoint up just a little bit and our white point down. There we go. And we're gonna change this from normal down to screen as well. All right, so we're looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and throw a layer mask on there and paint black on our layer mask on the bottom here, just to make sure that it doesn't show up. Now my scratches are like too much, right? Let's go ahead and bring everything about, I'm gonna bring the body down a little bit and we'll bring this up just a little bit. There we go. All right, so the scratches are a little bit too much right now. So let's go ahead, we can lower our opacity and it's just gonna make the scratches just a little bit more subtle. There we go, and we'll do the same thing with here. And you can move this around too, so it doesn't have to be like front and center there. All right, and I'm gonna lower the opacity of that as well. All right, we're looking pretty good. Now, I wanna go ahead and color the subject here, color me basically, and have that fit into the background just a little bit more. So let's grab a hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm gonna clip that by hitting Option Command G, and we're just gonna lower the saturation just a little bit. There we go, and that's starting to fit in a little bit more. Now, the next thing I wanna do, just to bring all the colors kind of into the same palette here, what I wanna do is create a gradient map. So I'm gonna click on my adjustment layers, we're gonna go all the way down to a gradient map, click on my gradient editor, and we're gonna choose black as our base color. Okay, and then this color here, we're just gonna choose like a very, there we go, like a light orange. Oh, there we go, something like that. Looking pretty good. Now we can change this color at any time, but basically we're just gonna change the layer blend mode here from normal down to color, and that's gonna color whatever's on our image, and I'm just gonna lower the opacity a little bit so we still have some of the original color visible there. All right, looking pretty good. Now let's throw a levels adjustment layer on here. There we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and darken down the subject a little bit as well. So especially towards the bottom. So let's grab our curves adjustment layer, Option Command G to clip that, and we're gonna really darken this down, especially here towards the bottom, because I want this to kind of fade to black. There we go. So just basically painting white on my layer mask is making this visible down here on the bottom. All right, I'm okay with a little bit of that saturation, so let's bring that back. So painting this visible down here on the bottom is just kind of fading my subject out, just making it darker. And then you kind of see the scratches through everything else that's going on. I'll lower the opacity of that just a little bit as well. All right, and I think we're gonna go ahead and bring the subject down a little bit more. Just give a little bit more room here for the top of the image. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and add a little bit more contrast to our subject here. So let's simply grab a brightness contrast adjustment layer, and I'm gonna bump that contrast up, and we're gonna bring up a brightness just a little bit as well. There we go. That's just gonna make it look a little bit more scary. And let's bring our curves adjustment layer. Let's make that visible here towards the bottom as well. There we go. And our whole subject, we're just gonna move just a little bit over there. And then our trees, let's go ahead and make these just a little bit bigger. I kind of want the tree line to kind of, there we go, come down and start encompassing around the area of my subject. All right, and these levels adjustment layers that we made on the scratches, let's just make these scratches just a little bit more visible. There we go. See, that's the wonderful thing about using smart objects, is you can go in here and change your adjustment layers at any time. It just gives you so many different options. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is right above all of this, we're gonna go ahead and use my gradient tool, and I'm gonna choose our foreground to transparent gradient here, and let's just choose black as our foreground color, and I'm just gonna click and drag in from the bottom, and we're gonna just go straight up. Now, little tip here, I'm gonna double click here, and here in our layer style, we're gonna go where it says blend if, and I'm gonna hold Alt or Option and go from the right to the left, and this is just gonna let a little bit of the highlights kind of show through. Just looks a little bit more natural when you do this. All right, and then we're gonna add just another one right here on the very bottom. Cool. All right, we're looking really pretty good. I'm liking how we got. Now, again, I'm doing this pretty quickly, guys. Obviously, like when you're doing your own version, and you know, when I would be doing this for, you know, for my quote unquote real version, I would spend a lot more time than this. This is just like, all right, let's show you how to do this and get you inspired to do your own. All right, there we go. And cool, let's bring that down there. And then you can even just paint black or white on your layer mask to decide where you want this to be visible. All right, cool. We're looking good. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add our little plane crash to the image. So let's go back to our Finder here. We're gonna pull in our plane. There we go. And this image is also from Pexels, which is a really cool stock image website. All right, so we're gonna add our plane in. Now, the first thing I wanna do is I just want the plane to show up. So I'm gonna change my layer blend mode from normal down to multiply. There we go. And let's go ahead and bring it above everything. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's shrink our plane down. And it's a smart object, so if I want to make the plane bigger at any time, I can do that and I won't lose any of my definition. Okay, now remember, we already gave these scratches here and the background, we already applied a hue saturation adjustment layer to that. Remember that, which gave it a color? So I'm gonna just do the exact same thing to this plane. Hold Alt or Option and click and drag this, copy it to that plane, and check that out. It just colored that plane, which is, again, why smart objects are so cool. Okay, now let's use a levels adjustment layer. I'm just gonna make my whites a little bit brighter, okay? And then we're gonna make our darks just a little bit lighter as well. That's gonna help it look like it's actually, you know, crashing into the forest there. All right, there we go. That looks pretty cool. Let's just put a layer mask on here, make sure we mask out the edge there. All right, there we go. And let's go ahead and make our plane just a little bit smaller here. Control or Command T, and that's gonna make the plane smaller. All right, we're looking really good, guys. So the next thing I wanna do is, let's go ahead, I'm just basically need everything to blend together a little bit better. My subject's still a little bit too saturated, so we're just gonna click here on this hue saturation adjustment layer and click and just drag that saturation down just a little bit. It's gonna kind of help everything blend together just a little bit better. There we go. All right, and the subject's looking good at this point. So let's go ahead and close these layers down. We can come back in here at any point in time and adjust them. So basically, let's just go through what we've got so far, because we're going pretty fast. We've got our subject and a bunch of layers that are clipped to my subject, okay? Then we've got our scratches here, and we've got another layer of scratches. We've got our background, and we've got our plane, and then a couple layers here on the bottom that are just kind of darkening down the bottom of the image. All right, and we'll lower the opacity of that just a little bit as well. All right, looking pretty good. So the next thing we're gonna do is bring in our title. So for the title, we're just gonna click on the very top here. I'm gonna hit T for my text tool, and we're gonna call this the nest. All right, there's a make-believe nest in the middle of the woods that will take you, basically. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger here. Now, I'm gonna go to we're gonna go to Window and Character. There we go. Oops, went to Channels. Let's go to Window and down to Character. And now we're just gonna spread this apart just a little bit farther. First, I'm gonna make my color. We're gonna make this one of these dark colors pulled from my image itself. And I'm gonna spread apart our letter spacing. Okay, and this is just gonna allow me to kind of fill our space here a little bit. And we're gonna bring our size down. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's bring our size down just a little bit more and bring our letter spacing up. Now I'm gonna hit Control or Command A to select everything, and you click on my Move tool and click on the vertical line here, and that's just gonna make sure it's centered vertically. There we go. And now that I've got that in there, I'm like, you know what? My plane is a little bit too big. Let's go ahead and make the plane a little bit smaller and rotate this around. Now, the next cool thing that we can do is I'm gonna create a new layer on top of this, and I'm gonna use my brush here. I have a really special brush. It's called the Smoke and Fog brush, and you guys can actually download this on Phlearn.com. Just follow the link on your screen right now. You can download this Smoke and Fog brush. It's really cool. Basically, it just allows you to paint smoke and fog. So in this case, I'm gonna select this color here, and you can see if I just paint around, it just looks like smoke on my image, which is really cool. Okay, now I'm gonna paint this over top of the logo just a little bit. So let's right click here and go to Create Clipping Mask. So it's gonna clip just my logo. All right, there we go. And we're just gonna paint a little bit of this fog over top of my logo. There we go. That's just gonna kind of make it set in there just a little bit. And we're gonna do the same thing over top of the plane. So let's go ahead and create a new layer and clip that over top of the plane and change our layer blend mode from normal down to lighten. So this fog is just gonna kind of lighten up the plane a little bit. All right, and let's just move this plane up just a little bit there. All right. Cool, looking good, and just kind of fading that in there. All right, there we go. All right, I think we're looking pretty good. Let's bring our forest down just a little bit. All right, so now we get to do some, fun kind of composition things. There we go, just to make sure everything is kind of working together. And yeah, I think we're looking really good. So we've got our subject, and I'm gonna go ahead and start grouping these things together. So we've got our title here, all right? We've got our bottom gradient here. Let's just go ahead and call this, there we go. All right, and here we have our plane. And then we know what these are. That's our forest, and here are our scratch textures. Let's just make these a little bit less visible here, the scratch textures. So basically you can see kind of the workflow is like get everything in here that you want, and then kind of work on blending everything together and positioning it around, and just making sure that it actually does fit like what you want. All right, and just making the subject just a little bit larger as well. All right, guys, we are almost done with our image. I'm just gonna darken around the edges just a little bit more. So let's go back in here to that, remember that curves adjustment layer that I made? I'm just gonna go back into this curves adjustment layer, and we're just gonna darken around the edges just a little bit more. And that's gonna help it kind of just like blend in and look like it's a part of the image, which is exactly what we want. Now, all we gotta do to finish it up, we gotta bring it in our credits, add a little tagline, and then we're gonna be done with our horror movie poster. All right, so for our tagline, let's go ahead and go at the very top. I'm gonna hit T for the text tool again, and we'll just put a fun tagline in here. Escape if you can. You always have to have a fun tagline in a horror movie poster. Now, we're gonna pull the color. I'm gonna click on my color, and I'm gonna pull this from the color right up there. And we're just gonna pull this all the way to the bottom there. And I'm gonna make it, we're gonna change the layer or the weight here, I'm gonna go down to bold here so we can see. There we go. Just makes it a little bit more visible. Now, here we have this bottom gradient. There we go. And that does look really good. All right. If I want this, I'm gonna probably move things around just a little bit, but you can see how this little area right here underneath the text, that's kind of distracting. So I'll probably remove that if needed. All right, and then just to save a little bit of time, basically I just went ahead and pre-typed out the credits. So I'm just gonna click and drag these here into my image. So obviously when you guys are doing this, basically just type out, you know, whatever type of movie credit looking things that you wanna do. And what I did here, we'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see. What I did is just added the actual team here at Phlearn, who produced this together, and then just, you know, like gets large letters for their names, and then, you know, small letters. And that's really simple. Just here in your type tool, just, you know, change the size larger and smaller and things like that. I just went ahead and made them ahead of time because it took like 20 minutes to do that, and I'm sure you don't want to watch me do that for 20 minutes. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and bring that up, and then in this bottom gradient, I'm gonna just paint with black for our foreground color. And we're just gonna paint here. There we go. I'm just gonna paint black right underneath there. All right, you know what? I'm gonna do this right under the credits because that whole layer was set to a lower opacity. So on this layer right here, we'll just paint black right here underneath the credits. Or underneath escape if you can, rather. And that's just gonna make sure we get rid of anything that kind of gets in the way. Beautiful. I love that poster. It's so cool. It's so creepy. Ooh, so creepy. Let's go back here and see if we can do any more refinement on it. These scratches, I'm gonna make the scratches visible. There's just a little area here where the scratches weren't visible. So let's make sure to put them in there. I like these scratches because it kind of like fits with the saran wrap. Like you know, this kind of looks like scratch texture and things like that. And then the scratches here kind of like add to that same deal. So I would recommend, if you do add texture to your image, I would recommend, I'm gonna just try bringing our opacity up 100% on these and then popping another levels adjustment layer. If you do decide to add a texture to your horror movie poster, which is a lot of fun, I would recommend trying to find a texture that looks like kind of similar to, you know, kind of similar language or like similar style to whatever your actual poster is. I think I liked it a little bit lower. All right, I'm gonna continue playing around with this, obviously after the fact, but there we have it, guys, our horror movie poster from start all the way to finish. This was so much fun, and you can see this is totally DIY. Our lighting was a light bulb. This is totally something that you can do, and you've got all month long. So now it's your turn to create your own DIY horror movie poster and submit it on Phlearn.com. You can click on your screen right now or follow the link in the description right down below. We're giving away huge prizes. We're giving away year-long subscriptions of Phlearn Pro that gives you access to every Phlearn tutorial we've ever made, including Lightroom presets, Photoshop actions, Photoshop brushes, everything we've ever done, you can get for a year for free just by submitting to our contest. So have some fun, take some pictures with your friends, make some horror movie posters, and let's get creative together. Thanks so much, guys. I'll Phlearn you later. Bye, everyone.